Hey, this is gonna be a little bit different than my usual content. This is going to be a depressing and sad and just terribly sickening story from my past that I'm gonna tell to you, just because it's still happening as I'm recording this. So I kind of want to get it off my chest. So I figured the LP community, they're the guys that are they understand where I'm coming from here. LPing makes you feel better. My story starts my freshman year of high school. Scratch that, my sophomore year of high school. I met a girl by the name of Whore, or at least that's what I'm gonna call her from now on. To make this easier, I'm gonna call her Stacy. So Stacy and I met in my sophomore year and her freshman year of high school. When we first met, I was in a very short-term relationship with one of her close friends. It lasted literally, I think, 2 days, and I was like, yeah, I'm not really into you. You're not really into me. Let's just be friends, hang out. So me and her friend stopped dating, and I took an interest in her. Stacy was a nice girl. She liked Back to the Future. She was a really cool chick, and I wanted to hang out with her. So I told her this, and she was like, "Oh, that's really sweet, Zach. That's my name. I like that a lot. Sadly, I'm dating a guy. He's kind of an asshole. I don't know how long we're gonna be dating though. So I mean, we'll be friends or whatever. It'll be a good time." So I was like, "All right, whatever." So I'm her friend, and I start to notice little things about Stacy. She would hold my hand like jokingly in class or on the way to our drama class, which we shared together. Little things like that kind of put me on edge, because I was like, oh, you have a boyfriend. But then my subconscious was like, oh, he's an asshole. It doesn't matter. Why do you care about her boyfriend? It's a prick. He doesn't even go here. He's like 10 miles away. So I didn't think about it at the time. And I often read a quote as a young boy and as a teenager on sites like Reddit that said, if she'll cheat with you, she'll cheat on you. But I didn't look at what I was doing with her as cheating. Eventually, she texts me out of the blue, and she's like, "Hey, Zach, I just broke up with the boyfriend. Not sure if I'm ready for a relationship right now, but we should definitely hang out sometime." So, being the awkward young man that I am, she was really my first love. Like, I'd been dating before her, and I never really clicked with me. I never really cared enough about anyone to continue dating past like the 3 or 4 month bit. So eventually, like 2 days later, I text her and I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to the drama department's show at my school. It's gonna be, or our school, it was both of our schools at the time. It'll be really cool. We'll hang out, and never know what might happen." And of course, she took that as the hint, and she was like, "Oh, I don't know if I should come." But then our mutual friend, the one that I dated, that was her close friend, pretty much informed her that I was gonna ask her out that date. So she did. She showed up. And we hung out. It was an alright first date, I guess. We had a third wheel tagging along, which is awkward, but what are you gonna do? We ditched the drama department and just went out and hung around these schools, like wooded area behind it, and just climbed trees and whatnot. And I remembered the way I asked her out was very uncomfortable and awkward. I said something along the lines of, "Wow, this tree is really cool. I want to climb it." And she was just like, "Yeah?" Like, she was waiting on me to ask her that, I assume. And eventually, I was just like, fuck it, YOLO. And I asked her out. And she said yes. What? I asked her out, and she goes, yeah, sure, yeah. And I was like, that like 5 second period when she was saying was just like, my heart all over the place. Terribly sad moment, but what are you gonna do? So eventually we pick up dating, and about 5 minutes after that, the drama department thing ended, and we went our separate ways. She went to go home with her friend, and I went to go home with my dad. And I get in the car, and my dad's like, "Oh, what are you smiling about?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'm dating a chick now. She's pretty cool. I've been friends with her for a while." And that smile that I had that day, that happiness that I had in the car with my dad on the way home, did not stop for about 2.5 years. For about 2.5 years, I was a lot happier than I was before. Stacy was a really, really cool chick. She was very quick-witted, smart, intelligent, thoughtful, caring, nice, or so I thought. So let's fast forward to like 2 months in the future. I quickly learned that Stacy's real issue was that her friends controlled a lot about her life, and I don't think she had a very easy time making friends, because she would hang out with like the lowest of the low, and to the point where it was a detriment. Like she would hang out with she always told me that if I ever started doing drugs that she'd break up with me, and I thought that was funny and cute. But she hung out with drug dealers and people that weren't necessarily like junkies, but people that smoke pot on the regular, which I don't really care about. Weed's fine to me, whatever. And that kind of like threw me for a loop, how her friends treated her and how she treated her friends. And eventually I realized that her friends controlled a major aspect of her life, because a short while afterwards I found out that her best friend, not the one that I dated for like 2 days, but her other best friend, fucking despised me. Which normally YOLO, I don't care, bitches are bitches, I don't care. Her best friend at one point convinced her that 2 months after we started dating, that that she should break up with me because I was not as good as her ex-boyfriend. That was kind of the first hiccup in our relationship, and I kind of got I wouldn't say I was heartbroken. Like, I was madly in love with this girl after like week 1 of dating her. I fell for her instantly, but I kind of figured that if her friends are gonna convince her to dump me, then it wasn't worth it. And somehow, again, a day later, she convinced me that it wasn't her fault, and we were back together maybe 2 days later. So that was our first off. We were very on and off again type relationship. But eventually we were back together, and we kept going, and everything was more or less fine for a while. For a while, that is. Eventually, there was rumor from the friend that I dated for 2 days before I dated her informed me, because they were fighting. Stacy and the friend were fighting, and the friend informed me out of spite and malice that Stacy had cheated on me with both her ex-boyfriend and one of her old friends not too long ago. And I look back at it now, and I think about it, and she was likely absolutely 100% correct. I get that she was mad when she told me, but she probably was being very, very truthful when she told me that. And at the time, when I first heard it, like the first 5 minutes, I was pissed. So I went and I told her, and I was like, look, you're a whore, I hate you. I got pretty pissed off, and then she took me aside and explained to me, blah, 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 it's not true, this, that, the other. And in some way, shape, or form convinced me that didn't happen, and that everything was fine. So again, we went from off again to on again in the course of like 5 hours. So moving on, eventually she... I split off to a different high school for my senior year, which then extended to be like an extra year and a half, which was great. But I changed schools with her, and I kind of realized that as soon as I switched schools, that things were going to be very weird with us. But by this point, we've been dating for like a year and a half. I loved her. I was happy. She loved me, or so I thought, and things were great. So I figured it wouldn't be an issue. So we started talking. We were through text about it and all this, and she kind of just assured me that everything would be fine and everything would be fine with me. But they weren't. I started hanging out with a different friend group, just an old friend from middle school and then some of his friends, and I started getting more comfortable with myself and who I was, and I think for some reason that distanced her because she wasn't yet comfortable with herself. So I don't know if it was that or if she was always like this, but something changed in her, and she started hanging out with worse people. Sometime around last year or the year before that, she started hanging out with a girl that liked really bad music. This is kind of like a big kicker in their relationship. I could always tell when she was good Stacy or bad Stacy by the music that she listened to, because originally when I first met her, she listened to really bad, like dorky music that I thought was adorable. And then once I switched schools, she started listening to trash. I don't know how to describe it, but it was just, she got it from her friends, her new friends, and that's kind of where it came from. So that's how I could always, determine which Stacy I was talking to. So, oops. So anyway, she eventually started hanging out with these people and listening to terrible, terrible things. And, I didn't care at first, but then quickly I figured out that it was so far beyond just music. She changed as a person to a person that I wasn't exactly a fan of. But I knew deep down that Stacy was still in there, and I loved her, and this, that, and the other. So I continued on, and I explained to her several times. I was like, "Look, I love you. Let's just be us. You know what I mean? Around me, be me. Around your friends, be whoever you want to be. I don't care. You know what I mean?" And I don't know if she ever understood what I meant by that. I assume not. But what are you gonna do? And I guess at some point, she thought that I was cheating on her. I will say, with all sincerity right now, even after everything that happened with her, that I would never dream of cheating on her. I would never dream to be in a relationship with someone like her and cheat on her. That's not who I am. I talked to some chick that she thought I cheated on her with because all of my friends knew how Stacy was. They knew that she would be quick to get jealous, and that I was mad for her. So at some point I had a falling out with a chick and this other guy that was her friend, and I just stopped talking to them because they didn't matter to me. Because I was mostly friends with them through a different friend who later stopped going to my school, so I just didn't want to talk to them anymore. And through that falling out, she was convinced that I cheated on her through some way, shape, or form. I never did it. Of course, no amount of convincing could tell her that, even today. And that's kind of when, things started going downhill. That was probably about 2.5 years into the relationship. So then we have a 6-month period of just bad. At some point later on, I'm going to fast forward a couple months, I was in her car. She drives a adorable car that matches her personality. And she's texting, and I'm looking over her shoulder, just kind of, being a little bit, intrusive, but whatever. And I see that she's texting a guy that I know. I'm just gonna say his name's Austin because I don't really give a fuck. If he finds this video somehow, Austin, you're a piece of shit. And you're also like 12, so I'll fight you IRL. Fight me. But I'm like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know that they were friends. So I ask about it, and I say, hey, are you texting Austin? And she goes, nope. And I watch her hand go and delete all the messages. I watch her clear out the text log so I couldn't see what she did. At that point, I should have gotten out of her car and never spoken to her again. But I didn't. I made a mistake. A mistake that I am telling you about so you don't make this mistake in the future. I'm not going to cry, but I might cry. IRL, fight me. So, at that point, I'm just like, alright, things are weird. So we're on edge for separate reasons that I'm not going to get into, that aren't, related to anything important. So I'll skip over that detail. But we were already both on edge for separate reasons, and I got mad. I told her, I was like, I want you to delete the messages, blah, 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 and she's like, no, I didn't. And it was a pointless argument because she's the kind of person that will just deny it, even when you know for a fact that she did it. So at some point, a couple days later, she invites me to go see, I think it was that Oz movie that just came out, the one with James Franco in it, something of Oz, whatever, not Wizard of Oz, clearly. And I was like, yeah, I'll absolutely go, but for whatever reason, I couldn't go. So she told me, alright, fine, then I'll just go with my mom. So I said, alright, well, have fun with your mom. I love her mom. Her mom is fucking perfect. Stacy's mom, if you're watching this, you've got it going on. I love you. But for some reason or another, she said she was going with her mom. And that's fine. Whatever. I wanted to go with her, but fuck it, YOLO, I'm not important. So, at some point, I'm on Facebook throughout the day when she's out, and I see a thing on Facebook, and it says, someone posted with, and they were with Stacy or whatever on Facebook, and it said, seeing Oz with Stacy, having a good time. And this was just a guy that I've met in the past and that I like a lot. He's just a friend. This guy wasn't trying to put his moves on Stacy, and I knew that. But it pissed me off that she just didn't tell me that she was gonna go with him. So I asked her about it, and she was like, I didn't do it. I didn't go with him. And I said, oh, it says you did right here. I mean, he posted about it on Facebook. And she was like, no, I was going to, but then at the last minute I just took my mom. So I just sat down and explained to her that the movie started at 8:15 and he posted at 8:16 and said that he was with you. So no, that did not happen. And after about 2 days, she finally admitted it and said that she just didn't want me to be mad. Now, if you run into that experience, if you run into the whole, they don't get mad, if you run into that situation, that's a situation you don't want to be in. Because then they just hide shit from you, and it's not something that matters. Fast forward to about a month later, she just vanishes. Her Facebook's gone, and she is either ignoring my text or her phone is just not on. So I text her a few times, and I'm like, hey, you alright? What's going on? I miss you. What's going on? I love you. All this. I call her, and it rings and goes to voicemail, and I leave a few messages. I'm like, hey, I'm worried about you. I mean, you didn't get hit by a drunk driver, because we live in an area full of drunk drivers, and she doesn't wear a seatbelt, and that was always a big worry of mine, because for some reason I cared about this woman. And eventually I'm freaking out. It's after about a week of this. I'm scared that I may have lost who at the time for some reason was still the most important person in the world to me. So I messaged her mom on Facebook, and I'm like, hey mom, I don't know where Casey is. Everything okay? Is she has she been in an accident or anything? Is she fine? And she was like, oh hey honey, no, everything's fine. She got into an argument with her dad, and she lost her phone for a week. I'm sure you're going to be the first person that she messages. She cares about you a lot. And I said thank you and goodbye. And this is again a turning point for Stacy, because one thing that she's always prided herself on is how she treats her family. She would never get into an argument with her dad and get grounded. In fact, she was never grounded, ever. She's done a lot of things in the past, but never been grounded. She was always very good to her family. That's something I admired about her a lot, and I guess that's why my instinctive primate mind wanted to make a family with her. But she was grounded. I don't know what the argument was about to this day, because as soon as she got her phone back, she messaged me and just said, hey, what's up? Like, she didn't say, hey, sorry about that, or sorry for worrying you. She just said, hey, what's up? And this is when I suspect she started talking to the other guy. We're gonna call him Rick. This is where I'm gonna get all like cryy and faggy or whatever, but fuck it. At some point when I was talking to her that night when she first got her phone back, she told me that she wasn't sure how she felt about anything, and I was like, yeah, I just had a week without you. Can you explain what's going on? And she kind of just abruptly broke up with me. And that was really never the case. There was always some sort of hint that it was going to happen, but I guess having a week without talking to me was the hint. But I don't know. I later determined that she was seeing a guy named Rick during those days. Which, of course, as it would, it crushed me, on the inside, because I felt like, oh, that sucks. Yeah, I mean, I love her to death, and I thought she was different, but obviously she's not. At some point after that, it got worse. So she kept talking to me. She kept texting me, and she would explain and be like, yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say. I just don't think we should be together. And she would call me one night and be like, I love you. I miss you. I'm sorry, we'll be back together soon. And the next day, she'd be on the phone with me, on speakerphone with her friend, making fun of me for still caring about her. Something in her changed, for the worse. And it was really a situation that was heartbreaking to see, because I watched someone with a ton of, potential to do something great with her life turn into just, something that she would hate. And I don't know, it hurt, you know what I mean? At that point, I didn't know about Rick yet, so I still had some sort of inkling that I wanted to be with her. But then after a while, I'm texting her and she's texting me, and things are going how they are, and she tells me that she's dating a kid named Rick. Now, Rick is a kid that I had dealt with in the past. I don't necessarily like the kid, but I never had an issue. I never had a reason to hate him. So, I kept texting Stacy, and I kept saying, hey, I still love you, so I want to be together. But then after I found out about Rick, everything changed. So after I found out that Rick and Stacy were together, that killed me. It's one of those things that, what do you do? In that situation, what do you do? So I spent the next couple months being more of a wreck than I think she realizes, and more of a wreck than I think my family and friends realize. Everything was just wrong in life. And I realize now that it shouldn't have been. I should have, why put myself through it? Why deal with someone who is clearly a subhuman when it comes to emotion? And I shouldn't give a fuck. But I did. First loves are like that, guys. So deal with that as it happens. So eventually, at some point, I move on. It takes me a long time, but I fucking move on. And then one day my phone rings. I pick up the phone, and I don't recognize the number, so I answer it, and I say, hello. And a screaming male voice responds with, I will fucking kick your ass. I later found out that it was Rick. And now Rick's being hostile with me because he understands that the woman he chose to date is a prick. Which makes sense, because it pissed me off too. So eventually we get over the shit with Rick, and Rick stops trying to be all macho man to impress his lady, and I move on yet again. And then I'm checking Reddit, reading up on whatever on Reddit, and I see a message in my inbox, and I check it, and it's from Stacy, and it says something along the lines of, hey, Zach, I missed you. I want to fix things. I'm sorry. I was terrible. And I said in response to that, yeah, you were terrible. Fuck off. Or something. I don't know. I was probably really rude because, I'm not happy with her, obviously. So, at some point, I get on with life, and I get over her, and I'm happy, and I'm talking to friends, and I'm having a good time. And again, maybe like a week later, a message on Reddit from her, and it says something similar. I made a huge mistake. I was stupid. You're the only one that I care about. This has really opened my eyes. I'm serious this time. And that was a big thing that just keeps coming back. How this time she's serious, and how this time it's true. And like an idiot, third or fourth time, I agree to let her come over. It doesn't go well. Basically, I didn't feel like she was really trying to fix anything. I felt like she just wanted me to just forgive her and be normal again. So I was an asshole to her, and I was like, look, if you're not going to be a fucking human being, then get the fuck out of my house. I don't want to deal with you. And so she did. And then, again, we were off again for about a month. And then New Year's Day happened. Now, this is really where I'm going to, fucking lose it and be a giant pussy and start crying and shit. Let me explain a few things about my relationship with Stacy. She was not a very intimate person, and this is going to get really personal. If you don't like it, get over it, don't watch it. She wasn't a very intimate person, in any way. She didn't really hug much or whatever. And being that I was her first love or whatever, and that she was mine, it was just one of those things where, having sex with her was interesting. And it was one of those, you had to, convince her. You had to be like, look, I love you, you love me. You're not gonna go to hell or anything, or whatever. So that happened. And then New Year's Day happened. I'm recording this on the 2nd of January, 2014. Yesterday was a big day. Of course, it was the new year. And she messaged me, and I was like, yeah, it's the new year. Fuck it. It's been a couple months since I've seen you, and since you've tried. Sure, new year, give you a chance, because it's the new year. And I did, and she came over, and she was at my house maybe 5 minutes. And she looks out my window in my room, and she sees Rick. Rick followed her on his bike, and was like punching his car and like calling her phone, and she was hiding her phone, and she was trying to get me to not notice. But eventually she goes outside to talk to him, and he's like threatening her and threatening to throw a bike through my window to come kick my fucking ass and all this. And she tells me that she was still with him. Just people suck. It's at this point that I you know, we go back in my room, me and her, because I didn't want her to have to go outside and then leave and have him follow her to work or whatever and get punched in the back of the face, because I feel like that, you know, I hate her, she's a whore, but I don't want her to get domestically abused. So she comes back in my house, and we're talking about it, and I'm like, are you serious? You're here to fix this and be together with me when you still have a boyfriend? And she is dancing around the subject and dancing around the fact that she's a piece of shit. And at this point, my whole family knows what's going on, because the kid was outside screaming, and my brother went outside to go fucking chase him off. And my mom is my poor mother. I'm 18, but you know, my mom is a Christian lady. Has to hear me like screaming at this chick, calling her a fucking whore, and I'm mad. Like I'm mad, and I shouldn't have said the things that I said, and I don't care. Honestly, if I saw her right now, I'd say the same to her. She deserved it. And then he calls me. My phone rings. I pick it up, and this is kind of where things get very complicated. He calls, and I answer, and I say, hello? And he says, I fucked Stacy. And I said, pardon? And he says, I've fucked Stacy so many times, and it took you forever to convince her. I fucked Stacy. At which point, I look her dead in the eyes, and she looks me dead in the eyes, and I feel like she knew exactly what he just told me. And I explain to him, I say, look, Stacy's a whore. Stacy is the kind of girl that will go out of her way to cause issues. She doesn't love anyone. She doesn't love herself. She has no concept of human emotion. And sadly, I still love her, and I hope that you get over it and stop loving her, because there's no reason for us to be fighting about this. I don't care. So I hang up the phone, and I look at her, and she looks at me, and I stand up, and I thought for sure I was going to have to punch a chick in the mouth. I thought I was going to go to jail for beating a woman. Luckily, I didn't. I get right in her face, and I say, is it true, Stacy? And she looks at me, and she says, is what true? But with like this terrible poker face. And I say, did you fuck him? And she says, yes. I don't know if you guys have ever I don't know. Trying to explain why this matters to me is very complicated, and I've found it to be a complicated thing for my mind to understand. And I haven't really talked about it with anyone else yet, so I don't really know how I feel about it yet. But hearing that he fucked the girl that I loved and the girl who I cared for and was in love with, despite how horrible she was to me and her family and everyone around her, that was terrible. And the fact that she, like, had she not tried to get back together with me and they were together and they fucked, I don't care. I mean, it's not my issue to deal with. It's not my problem, you know. I don't care. I shouldn't care, and I was over her. But as soon as I heard that, I heard her confirmation of that, I was just like dead, you know what I mean? What do you do? So I'm like in her face, like our eyeballs are practically touching. I am so close to her, about to like punch her in the fucking mouth, and she's like stammering. At this point, she knows that she's lost all hope for ever dealing with me ever again. So she says, I'm gonna go. So I say, yeah, why don't you get the fuck out of here? I mean, so my mom comes after she like tears down the driveway and leaves or whatever. My mom's like, what just happened? And I was like, oh, a lot just happened. So at some point, my mom calls the cops because we can't have some kid coming to our house to like threaten me. Like I'm not worried about it, but there's a young child here, my nephew who's 2 years old, and my sister who were recently the victims of domestic abuse, and that's why they're down here instead of in their town of Kansas. So she called the cops and was just like, yeah, we have some kid down here that was threatening his girlfriend and his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, which was me. And we really can't deal with it. And at the same time, I, halfway out of spite and anger, I message her dad on Facebook. Halfway between angry and trying to piss her off, and halfway between I'm concerned that this violent asshole is like beating her. So I message her dad on Facebook and I say something along the lines of, "Dear Mr. Stacy's name, a kid came to my house today. Stacy came to my house to reconcile today, and this, that, and the other happened. And I heard him violently threaten her several times. I'm worried about it. I'm mad, but I don't want her to be injured. I want, the cops might show up at your house. We file a police report, whatever." And he saw the message at like 3:03 p.m. but never replied or called my mother, whose number I included. So I can only imagine that after years of being disrespected by Stacy, he just didn't give a fuck. That or she intercepted the message before he got to it, but I'm sure the cops are going to end up there, or maybe not, because, there's no crime committed. He just showed up at the house. Either way, that happened. And then I went on to deal with it. And for the night, things hurt. I couldn't get it out of my head that she would just go and just like be with this guy. I don't know. It didn't bother me as much before, but for some reason it just all came back. And it was a bad thing. It sucked. It still sucks even now. I'm having a hard time, getting up, but I've got New Year's resolutions I have to keep up. I have to keep running or whatever. I have to keep reading. I have to keep fucking editing videos for people. So I couldn't really, stop too long to mope about it. But sadly, it's one of those things that it just keeps sucking.